Hello, and welcome to Sobercast. We provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast format. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into the virtual basket. Also, if you're a member of NA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, NAPOD. NAPOD features NA speakers and workshops in the same format as Sobercast. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for NAPOD, N-A-P-O-D, all one word, on any podcast player app, or go to napod.xyz if you'd like to listen online. Hope you enjoy the podcast and have a great day.
Good evening, my name is John, and I'm an alcoholic. You know, I've used my last name ever since I got sober in this program, and at this point, it seems pretty ridiculous to try to stay anonymous, so. But the reason I do it is that an old man once told me when I was very newly sober, he said, everybody in town knew you were drunk, they might as well know you're sober. Okay, let's slow down here. What is this? Oh, thank you very much. Gin?
Yeah.
I didn't realize we had drank together. He knows my habits. Okay. Boy, a lot of people here. How many actual alcoholics? How many Al-Anons? Two. Spies. Well, I hope you're real Al-Anons. Like my wife. I jokingly say that my wife is the kind of Al-Anon that if she were to go down in a plane crash right before it hit the ground, someone else's life would flash before her eyes. How long? 10 minutes? I'm supposed to do this thing? Okay. Vancouver, Washington. Yeah. I also wanted to say there was a great vote of confidence that they had the raffle before the speaker. And I haven't seen anybody run out of the place with their goodies, so it says something. You know, no matter how many times I do this, thought that was maybe somebody that saw my last movie. I always get petrified before I walk up here because I feel as though it's my duty and my responsibility to enlighten you before I'm done speaking. So that actually your ass will be off your seat, levitating just slightly above it, so filled with the spiritual message that I will instill you with. And the truth of the matter is that once I get up here, I get even more scared. But I guess the good thing about it is that I really don't have to make anything up, you know. I don't have to learn anybody else's lines or wonder how it's going to turn out, what you're going to think of me, because it really doesn't matter to me deeply. I mean, really deeply. On the surface, it matters a lot, but... After all, I am an actor. Gee whiz. What a perfect profession for an alcoholic. A place where you can go and they pay you to lie and be somebody else. But what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. That's pretty simple because I remember most of it. As Charles Dickens said at the beginning of Great Expectations, I am not going to tell you what actually happened, I am going to tell you what I remember happening. Which in some cases could actually be very unique and different from each other. Just so that those of you who are not been around a long time, and so that you know that perchance I have a little sober experience to speak from. My last drink was February 6, 1982, so I've been sober for a tad. What is that? I promised that I'd never use this line again, but when you people applaud this shit, it's just, a friend of mine, an old man, once told me that congratulating a drunk for not drinking is like giving a cowboy with hemorrhoids a trophy for not riding his horse. Really? I mean, what the hell? I retired that line years ago, but it just keeps coming back to me, Brian Gumbel, actually, was the last person I said that line to on national television, but I can understand earthlings applauding that, but Christ, I have nothing to do with this, I have nothing to do with being sober. I just happen to stop drinking. So, let's fill in the facts, just the facts, ma'am. I was born into an alcoholic family, I'm sure, although I don't remember my father. He left when I was 2 years old, and like every good drunk, he had to leave. I understand that. He quickly pumped 2 or 3 children out of somebody else and then promptly died. Something else most good alcoholics do and know how to do well. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. There's a little drinking that goes on down there. On top of which I'm Catholic. On top of which I'm half Irish. So I had a birthright to the CIA, as we say, the Catholic Irish Alcoholic Organization. It seems as though I was afraid from the moment I was born. The story is told that my mother was in labor with me for almost 4 days. But I did not want to leave where I was. It was warm, it was wet, and I could drink all I wanted. Didn't even have to swallow. I've often had dreams of being a full-grown man with this wonderful tube just connected to this everlasting vat of Johnny Walker over in the background with tits. But I guess I had to show up, so I did, reluctantly. And I was also an only child until I was 16, I think, and my mother had another child from another marriage. He died when he was 2 years old. So for all practical purposes, for all of my formative years, I was an only child, which was a bit of an anomaly in a Catholic Irish city like New Orleans, and French. I'm mostly French, but there's a lot of Irish. All my cousins, my aunts and uncles had 13, 14, 15 children. I mean, Jesus. They just never stopped. My aunts were like Pez dispensers. So it was a perfect recipe for an alcoholic, because I felt alienated from the moment I could remember. No father. In those days also it wasn't like the modern times of equality these days. There wasn't like mommy and daddy are just going their separate ways, and you're going to spend a week with mommy, then a week with daddy, and daddy's going to take you to Florida in the summer, and mommy's going to take care of you during school. My father was dead, as far as anybody in my family was concerned. He lived 3 miles down the road, but I never saw him. He was dead to us. I was never called John by any of my relatives, by my mother, anyone in the family. I was called by my initials, JB, my first 2 initials. They didn't want to say the name John around me because his name was John. So I felt pretty alienated, I think, from a very early age, and rather afraid. I describe myself somewhat jokingly as a coward, but it's really true, I was. I think that had I been born an earthling, it might have been different. But I wasn't. I was born an alcoholic. And so the regular kind of traumatic perchance trivial, sometimes impactful events of a child's life. If they are an earthling, they perchance have some processes by which they can interpret these events and not have them cripple them. I had no such ability because I am an alcoholic. I am, in the same breath, the worst piece of crap in the world and God. And the battle within me was ever raging for who was actually going to win out. But there was this also innate arrogance and superiority that I found helped hide the enormous amount of fear that was ever present in my life. I grew up a rather, by some practical purposes, I suppose, normal childhood in New Orleans. Went to Catholic schools and did all the things that young kids do, I suppose. I didn't have any way to objectivize that which was going on in me. I spent a lot of time alone. I started reading at a very early age and hid in books. My mother worked, so my grandmother actually raised me. We lived with my grandfather and my grandmother. My grandfather. This is a slight assumption, but I'm sure he just said, holy shit, I thought I got rid of these people. He was around 50, I guess. He had 2 daughters, kicked them out, got them married. Now he could just relax, and here was this 2-year-old thrust upon him. And he was just a stern fellow. I don't think he was abusive. I don't remember, unless there's money in it, I might remember some incest, but I don't think there was. And on top of that, there were if I get into the nuns and the priests, we'll be here all night. So, let's just skip over that boot camp. Catholic schools, fear. There was always fear. That's the ever-riding, overpowering emotion that I remember having growing up. I have to lie to you so that you don't hurt me. What I'm doing can't be any good, so I've got to pretend I'm doing something else. I have to run away from you because obviously I'm not worthy, and yet I want everything you have before I go. Typical alcoholic behavior. Now that I know that, I know that now. I didn't at the time. I didn't know what it was. I used to go to bed at night, and it was this huge portrait of some saint over my bed with arrows and blood spurting out. And it's kind of like look on his face like it was kind of cool. So I thought that life was just this incessant numbing pain. And if you could go out in a blaze of glory as a martyr in the army of Christ, then you would, pass purgatory, pass limbo, and be right there next to God and be able to do whatever you're supposed to do up there. But I was never good enough to do that. So I was always afraid, like Cain. Where is he? And when I was a kid, if you thought it, you did it. So I was completely screwed. Didn't even have to do it to be condemned. It's like saying, don't think of an elephant. I didn't start drinking until I was 18 years old. I think at some point before that, at weddings or something, the mothers and aunts would make things for the little kids called pretty drinks, which was 7-Up and grenadine, maybe just a teaspoon of Jim Beam or Canadian Club or something, But I don't remember being attracted to it very much at all when I was a kid. There was always wine on the tables, big gallons of L&J or some cheap New Orleans wine. And the behavior of alcoholism was so prevalent in everybody I knew, it seemed now that I look back on it, there was no way to judge what was normal and what wasn't. So many of my relatives died of it, but they didn't die of alcoholism. They died of falling down the stairs, They died of car wrecks. He had a bad heart. Kind of deaths when you're done, you can donate your liver to the NBA. You know? Born, I hated school. It's like, oh man, all every day was, what am I going to do today? And then one day, 18 years old, I was playing music in a rock and roll band, and we were in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we picked up some hitchhikers who were Navy guys who were going off to Vietnam, and we robbed a liquor store. I think I maybe ran in and grabbed something and put it in a coat. And this was 1965. And we sat on the beach and drank whatever it was we had, Southern Comfort and Slow Gin or whatever ridiculous rainbow collection of booze. And I remember we were sitting outside this country and western bar, and I don't even know what was playing inside, Johnny Cash or something, and everybody else kind of like sipped them and tasted them and went, ugh. And went off, to go to the country bar, try to pick up women or something, and I said, yeah, I'll be right there. And I stayed in the car and just drank everything. No preliminaries, no training. A born professional. And then I remember just puking my guts up. And the next morning I woke up and I thought, now which one of those made me throw up? Because I shouldn't drink those again. But quite honestly, I know this is AA, but, my story is my story. I discovered marijuana shortly after that. And actually preferred those drugs to the drug of alcohol for quite a while. I drank occasionally, but this was the 60s after all. And so I became, I guess one would call it a pothead, but I took everything. I mean, I had no discrimination. That gene is gone from my brain. There was no like, well, I prefer, sometimes I like. Didn't matter. I swear to you, it did not matter. I would do anything. 4 bottles of Robitussin, I don't care. Just get me out of here. And that's what it did, boy. It got me out of here. Not only did it get me out of here, what it really did for me, which was even greater than getting out of here, it allowed me to believe what was in here. There was so much bullshit in here. So many personalities and, like lies about what I was, what I did, who I was. That sober, it was real tough to keep all those balls in the air. To look at you and go through the data bank and go, okay, who do they think I am? Who did I tell them I am? But with booze and particularly psilocybin, it was great. It was like a 3D display in front of me, like a huge database, and I had absolute instant access to all of it. And it was spectacular. I remember being on a television show, and it was a show about alcoholism and drug addiction in this country, and all these people, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that, children. Nancy Reagan and whoever the hell was around those days going, it'll kill you, it's horrible. And I remember speaking up and saying, one of the things I think we should tell kids is that probably the first time you do it, it's going to be great. Because we just pour all this crap into their heads, and the first time they do it, they go, oh, those bastards are trying to keep this from us. That it is going to be great, particularly if you be alcoholic. It's going to be spectacular. But unfortunately, that ride has a dead end at it, eventually. So it felt great, and it was wonderful, and what trouble it got me into, I just put down as life experience and adventures. Here's great alcoholic thinking for you. 1966, I graduated high school, and Vietnam was raging, top 10 with a bullet, as they say in the music business. And I had to make a decision either go to school to get a student deferment. Brilliant alcoholic thinking, I'll join. Because I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to get drafted. I figured I was much too tall for a rice paddy. So I figured I could join and then convince them to let me go. Which I did. I joined the Navy. 5 months later, they sent me home, deciding they had made a small error in allowing me to join their club. I mean, it's warped logic, but it worked. And it's amazing to me how well we can so completely screw up our lives and still survive. You know, we're like Gumbies. We just sort of hit a wall and transform ourselves into a little ball, bounce away, come back alive. Whoop. Now, the litany of the late 60s is, you know, it's like the litany of, I'm sure, many children of the 60s litany, from city to city, drug to drug, job to job. I worked in radio a lot. It seemed like the only thing I could do because I could sit down and do it. Nobody had to look at me doing it. I got married somewhere along there in lines in 68 or 69. That lasted 5 months also. Just crazy crap, you know, just untethered madness. But I still wasn't drinking. So, to cut to a small chase, in 73 I moved to Hollywood thinking that I was going to be an actor. Nothing else I thought I could do well. I was living in San Diego working for a record company. It went bankrupt, so I had to go either back to New Orleans or something else. So I decided to become an actor. Again, great logic, right? Choose a profession where there's 98% unemployment. And of the 2% that work, maybe 8 of them make a living. So I did that. I went to Hollywood and, again, being Gumby, got successful very quickly. Was on a series in 75, worked a lot, got married in 75. Again, still married, by the way, to the same person. Oh, please. You can applaud her. That's fine. And I had a son in 1977. 2 years after he was born, I left his mother. Just like my father left me. Coincidence or science? I was on a television series called Bubba Black Sheep in the mid-70s, and it was there that I really learned how to drink. It was a series with Robert Conrad, and I was playing a World War II pilot, part of a misfit gang of roughnecks, soldiers of fortune, hard-drinking, love-making Marines. And we used to do a lot of that, off camera. And I really, if I look at any kind of clock, I think that's when my disease just sort of kicked in completely. And from 76 until I got sober in 82, I was just a fall-down, stupid, loser, alcoholic asshole. I continued to work. At one point, my wife threw me out. She looked at me and she said, "I realize you want to kill yourself. Would you please just not do it in front of the children?" I sent her away to England to live with her mother. I lived on a sailboat, and I laid down for 3 months. Urinated in an orange juice bottle, snorted heroin, and pretty much decided that unless somebody came and changed this, this was the way it was going to be. And I would wind up as the toothless, gruff but lovable janitor on As the World Turns. But again, the Gumby phenomenon took its place. My wife came back, I got a job, she found us an apartment. I started working a little again. I did a movie in 1981 called Stripes, and I use it only as not as to fanfare you with my resume, but it's a turning point in sort of the last chapter of my drinking. We were in Kentucky making this film, and while we were there, John Lennon was killed. December 1980 is actually when we were there. And I was sharing a motorhome with a couple of other actors, one who was dead, John Candy, and a couple of other guys who we drank a great deal together. And we were in a dry town called Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And the PA, the kind of like gopher on the set, his job was, there were two of them, their jobs were to drive 11 miles to the liquor store back to our hotel. So there was this sort of, this caravan. And once Lennon was shot, we had this Irish wake for 2 weeks. We were drunk constantly. If you watch that film, we're just all just, whoop! All of us, all the time. And it got pretty funky. So I came back from that, and in May of 1981, I disappeared. I had the habit of disappearing. I used to like to drink in my car by myself. I'd go park on the beach or outside of a church and just drink. So I disappeared. And usually, invariably, when I truly disappeared, I would wind up home in New Orleans. And I wound up home in New Orleans. And for the first time, no matter how much, I couldn't get drunk. And I began to panic. Because as Tennessee Williams talks about in The Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, the click that was always there eventually stopped clicking. And I got very afraid and thought, what the hell do I do now? And a friend of mine who I've known since I was 10 years old was with me. And he looked at me, we were sitting in this bar, and he went, how much are you going to drink? And my only thought was, however how much it's going to take. There just wasn't enough. So I got on a plane and I came back to Los Angeles and I checked myself into a hospital. Again, brilliant alcoholic thinking. I checked myself into the hospital so that I would have a story to tell about where I had disappeared to. Honey? No, I haven't been drinking. I'm in a hospital. I'm sick. But again, great alcoholic that I am, I checked myself into an alcoholic ward in a hospital. And they put me in this room, and on the bedside table was this rather garishly colored blue book. And I read that book that day, sitting right there. Didn't stop till I was finished. And at the end of that book, I realized exactly what the problem was. I'm an alcoholic. Never said those words before. You know, I had jokingly said that I, like Dylan Thomas, when asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, he said, I want to be the drunkest man in the world, Daddy. And that's all I was. I wanted to be Dylan Thomas. I wanted to be Eugene O'Neill and John Steinbeck and Charles Bukowski. I wanted to barrel my way through life in a haze and screw all the beautiful women and drink with all the great men. But I was an alcoholic. So, I mean, that being known, it allowed me to drink in peace. I mean, once you know what the problem is, cool. Because my wife thought I was a slightly difficult time accepting that I was an alcoholic. As I said, she's very English, and it's pull yourself up by your bootstraps, asshole, and just get on with life. So I checked myself out of the hospital after going to one AA meeting. And it was okay. It was interesting. I mean, this is 1981. And so most rooms were, sort of barren and old men in trench coats. And you walked into the room, they had you a cup of coffee and a Marlboro as you walked in, So I got out of the hospital and thought, boy, it's good to know that you're an alcoholic. So, let's see. Drinking is a problem. I know that. But the marijuana thing, neither. You can't have too much marijuana. I mean, it's harmless, it's natural. So I went on the marijuana maintenance program for a while. But you know something? That shit makes you thirsty. So it would be, a week or 2 weeks of just smoking dope, and then just a one wine cooler, just little parts. So this went on from May of 81 until February of 82. So for 7 months or so, I kind of wafted around the thing, and then I got a job on a sitcom. I was fired from the job 2 days into rehearsal. Nothing, there's no bullshit, nothing to do with me, the casting director, et cetera, et cetera. There was a network thing going on between them, and it wasn't a true reflection of I didn't screw up. I never screwed up working, I can say that with some pride, although when I really look back on it, how many days I showed up drunk but still did the job. And I bet you it was funnier, too. I remember doing a play. I'm jumping back in time now, but I remember doing a play called Long Day's Journey into Night by Eugene O'Neill. It's a very serious play. It's two brothers and a mother who's a morphine addict, and the father's this famous actor, and his younger son is dying of tuberculosis, and the older son, who I play, is this raging drunk, and it's a great American play, but it's rather heavy. And one of the last scenes of the play, my character, after the mother has gone off the wagon and started shooting morphine again, comes back from the local whorehouse drunk. Really drunk. Jason Robards originated the role on Broadway. And I thought, in the sort of Marlon Brando-like life that I was leading, to really do it right, I should be drunk. So about halfway through the run, right before the scene started, I would stand behind stage and take a half pint of Wild Turkey bourbon and just chug-a-lug it, not stop until it was done. And the scene's about 25 minutes long. So about 8 or 10 minutes into the scene, now I can really act. The first time I did this, after the play, the director came up to me and said, "What the hell was that?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You took an hour to do that scene." And I thought it was just so filled with life and emotion. But most of the time, amazing how much we can deceive ourselves, isn't it? Anyway, so I got fired from this job, and I had money in my hand. And I have a friend at the time who I acted with a lot in theater, a fellow named Tom. And he and I drank together all the time, and he introduced me to heroin. And so we partied around a lot. So this night I went out and bought a bunch of booze and a bunch of coke. And I was at his house. And I was drinking and stuff, and, just doing the thing. And, I've said this as many times as I've pitched, but I just can't help but explain to you, this is what happened. I stood, all of a sudden, on the other side of the room, looking at me, this large, sort of angry, sad hulk, at this table with his nose down on the table about how screwed up the business was, and when I was running it, it was going to be different. These bastards don't know art. Yeah. And really, for that instant, I didn't know who the guy was. I said, what a poor loser bastard this guy is. One of those astral projections, you know. I'm sorry, I should have done that. And in the instant that happened, I was back at the table, just being that big, bulbous-faced. I weighed a lot more than I do now. My face is bubbly to begin with, and it was all bubbly. And I stopped in the middle of the snort or the middle of the sip or whatever the hell it was, and Tom was on the other side of me laughing at me, as I could make him laugh. And I just looked at him and I said, I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the head. And I got up from the table, walked to the front door, walked out of his house, got into my car, whatever it was then, a 58 Chevy Shift or what, I don't know what it was. Toyota, I think, actually. And I drove back to the house that my wife and my children were in. And I went to bed. And that was it. Not another drink, not another pill, not another joint, not another pipe. And I don't know what happened. I don't have a clue what happened. Because how many nights did I sit at tables and look in mirrors and hold guns to my head and say, I've got to stop this now. Well, tomorrow. I've got to stop this tomorrow. How many times did that happen? Thousands. In a year's period of time. Thousands of times that happened to me. And that night, I wasn't even thinking about it. That night, I was into it. I had booze and drugs and a willing audience, and it was early, and we could still blaze a fiery hole through Los Angeles. And it just stopped. You know, I got to tell you, I'm not a big believer in God. I've never been. I certainly was afraid of the one that was ascribed to me growing up in the Catholic Church. I was scared to death of the bastard. I kept thinking, what a sadistic son of a bitch you must be. But I never believed in it. I never loved it. I'd only pray to it when my ass was in a sling and I wanted to get one more day out. You make deals with anybody at that point. And in the 16 years I have been sober, I'm still very ambivalent about that entity. But something happened that night. The next morning I woke up and called a guy that I had met at the first and only meeting I'd gone to while I was in the hospital and said, okay, I can't drink anymore. What do I do now? And that night I went to a meeting in Hollywood and just started the thing. I didn't have a whole lot of attitude at that point. I thought at some point soon I would teach you how to do it, but I'd be willing to lay low for a little while. It didn't bother me. It didn't scare me that I'd have to be in these rooms the rest of my life. I sort of liked the idea. I got kind of pissed off when I saw the word God written everywhere at first. And I thought that each of us was individually different, unique. Until about a month into sobriety, and I was at a meeting in the basement of a church. And my habit was to stand in the back with a Yankee baseball cap on, leather jacket, and just sort of stand the whole meeting and look at the backs of all of you. And just rip the crap out of you. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. And the leader of the meeting got up and said, our speaker tonight is Tony. Tony, come tell your story. And Tony stood up at the podium. And I'm not going to blow anybody's anonymity here, but Tony is one of the most famous actors in the world, a man who I admired all my life. And as he spoke, as the saying goes, my life fell out of his mouth. the ambition, everything. I mean, it was just a template of how I felt. So there was another milestone for me shortly after I was sober that I knew, regardless of how different, perchance, the particulars are of our individual journeys to these rooms, the overriding emphasis of our lives are exactly the same. That's why we're here. So I got busy very quickly. I didn't see anything wrong with taking big books to bars. It says, carry the message to another alcoholic. Where am I going to find more alcoholics than in a bar? I pissed a few people off, but... How you doing? You know this book? Jesus. I became my own little Jehovah's Witness for a little while, you know?
Can I talk to you for a little while? I have some good news for you.
But I was quickly sort of taught the lesson that that's... But, you know, what I had to accept, finally, and this is what I used to do. There's a famous bookstore in Los Angeles called the Bodhi Tree. The Bodhi Tree is sort of a spiritual bookstore, the yoga and Zen and Scientology, every book you can imagine about philosophical, spiritual, feedy-weedy expressions of, you know, how to shove pipe cleaners up your nose and all that sort of thing, New Age thing. This bookstore is filled with those, and it's a great bookstore because there's some great texts in it, Carl Jung and etc. And I used to get really loaded and go to this bookstore and walk up and down the aisles, just hoping and wishing that one of those books would jump off the shelf, hit me in the head, fall on the floor, and I would find the answer. Well, as ridiculous as it sounds, I did. That blue book is the answer. For my life, that blue book is the answer. So, I clung to it dearly. If you are new or newer than I, or very new, you know, I got busy. I swept floors, I answered the phones downtown, I shook hands, I picked drunks up and took them to meetings. I used to drag at the time Jonathan was 4, when I got sober, I used to drag him around Los Angeles, looking for drunks that I had come across in meetings and knew where they sort of hung out, and would grab them and bring them to my house, put them in the shower. I really fell in love with the prospect of how I could possibly live in this program. And I got to tell you, and I don't mean this in any cocky way, but from that moment, around 11 p.m. on February 5th, 1982, I have not had the slightest urge to change this way of life. You know, I have lied and stolen and cheated and been a royal asshole in sobriety. I have screwed people over. I have hurt people I love. I have been egotistical, maniacal. But I've stayed sober, and I know to the world that may not mean much. But it's all I got, because without it, there's no chance of me ever not being a jerk or a liar. All right, let's talk about God. No, because it's real important, you know? Because I was reading in the book as I was flying here today, the story about the guy, I'm not a big book, like, real thumper guy, I can't, like,
Well, you know, on 482 it says, the word ever is misspelled in the 3rd edition, but...
And that's not to mean anyone who knows the book Doctrine of Ford. I think it's wonderful if you do. I really do. And if we can't laugh at ourselves, whoa. Unlike Freud, Jung really believed in the spirit world, really believed in God, was a Catholic. And he talks to this man, the fellow, I guess, who eventually went to the Oxford group or wherever the hell, I don't know the linear of the story, that Ebbe eventually met, I guess, is this guy. And Jung talks to him about that the only people he's ever known that had this fundamental atomic level change. And I know that's what happened to me. And it, in some degree, had to happen to every one of us, or will happen to every one of us. Otherwise, we will not stay here, I don't think. Because if you're sober a long time and you're miserable, really miserable, maybe you should drink a little more. Just to make sure. So if you remove, I hate to use this as a therapy session because I don't believe meetings should be, but I'm really, after the amount of time I've been sober, and I'm still struggling, really struggling, intellectually and spiritually and emotionally with this whole concept of not a higher power. I believe in a higher power, and I thank whatever that is for the second step. Because if the second step, it said, came to believe that God could restore us to sanity, I would be screwed. And maybe a lot of us would be screwed. But it says higher power. Whew. I can plug into that. I live close to the ocean in California, and I know that this power is greater than myself. Every day I am taught that lesson. When I was newly sober, I kept yelling at my sponsor. My first sponsor was a Jew, fat, atheist. But one of the most spiritual men I've ever met. Truly spiritual. My home group in Los Angeles is We Agnostics. It's the truth. But I tell you what, in those meetings, I see more sometimes searching for a spiritual connection than I do in Lizard Lick, Mississippi, where there is only one higher power, and it's Jesus Christ. And people that come in new, who can't buy that, you struggle, perchance. But anyway, he wrote down a sentence on a piece of paper. He said, God as I understand God is, and he put an ellipsis, ... after the sentence, and gave it to me. And told me to go home and finish the sentence. That seemed like a reasonable intellectual exercise. So I went home, and for a good month, I pondered, boy. I really pondered. I came up with this existential Stephen Hawking's reality. The metamorphosis between Hinduism and Buddhism and Catholicism. I mean, this enormous, almost cataclysmic explanation of what runs the universe. And when I was finally satisfied with it, I brought it to him proudly and gave it to him. And he immediately took it, and without reading it, tore it up. And said, good, now, pray to it. I think it, and I do. I've got to change his name, though. It's sort of like Spock's first name. It takes 10 minutes to say it, so I'm going to have to change it to something else. But, I pray every day. I meditate every night before I go to sleep, in my way. I think the only essential that I need to remember is that if there is a God or not, I'm not it. And as long as I keep remembering that I'm not it, even if it's the random chaos of the universe, then it's okay. I just have to stay out of my own way. As my sponsor said, the first thing we do is fire our minds. And I had to fire my mind. And, and believe me, it's like a government employee. It doesn't quit easily. My son, Jonathan, great alcoholic. When he was 14 years old, I said to him, I'm saving a chair for you, buddy. Boy, he hated me for that. I'm not like you. I don't drink. When they found the 4 pounds of marijuana in his truck, I can... He's sober now 3 years. For him, I'll take applause. Boy, got sober at 17 years old. I said to him, boy, if I got sober at 17, I could have really made something of myself. And it's remarkable to see it in him. You know, and maybe because I'm his dad and I'm full of bullshit for him, but I look in his face and I know he's got it. You know, that look that I see where I know guys don't got it. A couple of them have died recently. You just know, you know, a friend of mine, Chris, big, jolly, fat comic. He's dead now. And a friend of mine said the perfect thing. We used to see him in meetings and they said, you know, he was so busy saying yes to us that he didn't hear a word we said. And I see that a lot of meetings. Oh, yeah. Oh, great. Oh, man, I'm so glad to be, yeah. And they're just screaming, get me out of here. I just can't do it. Too much pain. You know, and these guys don't want to die. I don't think they wanted to die. I just think they wanted to stop the pain. You know, and I should be dead. I mean, just statistically, it seems to me I should be dead. How many nights those 4 Quaaludes, were they 4? Did I do 4? I'm not sure if I did enough. I better do one more just to make sure. We shouldn't be here. You know, we're all nice, sitting here all pretty. Ticket, I got a ticket, I want a thing. What kind of self-respecting drunks are we, you know? Running up for little reeds and shit. I mean, that's the kind of shit you would just fling out of your car. But isn't it nice that you can get to a place in your life where you're just an old, boring, fart white guy, you know? I mean, whoever thought we would stay around long enough just to be like old, boring farts? Man. So, you know, it's getting hot, and I just want to say, in somewhat of a serious note, if you're new, please don't go anywhere. Stay here. You know, that sounds like bullshit if you don't believe it, but regardless of what new they find, you know, now we got these, we know where the genes are that make us drunks. You can splice that gene off of you and you won't want to drink anymore. Okay, fine. Somebody walk up to me and say, you can take a pill and you can be satisfied with 1 martini an evening. Excuse me? What's the point in that? I mean, or it would take me 5 or 6 drinks just to decide what I wanted to drink that night. But I think if we look at the statistics, we will see that this is the proven method of achieving and maintaining any kind of decent, not just sobriety, but life. I see guys out there with these programs that, you know, make you hug the teddy bear and beat up the little child. But you know what? I mean, it seems to me if you don't handle your shit on an everyday basis, there's nothing, you know? I've described this program like dialysis. It's just like dialysis. I can come here and I can get all my kidneys cleaned out and it's great. But unless I come back on a regular basis, my kidneys are going to fill up with crap again. You know, we're just that way. We're special that way. I'd like to thank everybody in the committee for asking me here. I've enjoyed very much speaking with you. Thank you for sharing in my sobriety.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.